BBC World Service across Cayman on Bobo FM. The following commercial messages are brought to you exclusively by Stingray Media.
With you in mind, we have your style. Find what you need down every aisle. You want saving, selection, and quality. That's why we're your home store. Home store. The way to make a home. The way to make a home.
When you're on the go, the experienced team at Foster's Pharmacy are here to help. Drop off your prescription while you shop or WhatsApp us and we'll prepare it, ready for your arrival.
Whether you need prescription or over-the-counter medications, blood glucose testing, or advice on vitamins and supplements, we're here early in the morning to late at night. Both of our locations at our Camana Bay and airport stores are open 7 a.m. to 9 p.m., Monday to Saturday.
For more info, visit fosters.ky/pharmacy. Foster's Pharmacy. Better health because we care.
The Office Hero. To claim this title, you have to make an exceedingly wise decision. Do something that benefits staff, impresses clients, all while keeping expenses low. Are you ready to be the Office Hero? Here's what to do. Call Hughes Cleaning Service. Hughes Cleaning Service will make your office shine and you a hero. Dusting, vacuuming, windows, sanitizing, and more. Hughes expert cleaners will make your office a healthy, immaculate, impressive workspace. Call 949-0734. Visit hughes-janitorial.com. Hughes, you get more than clean.
When it comes to weekly meal prep, I trust Kirk Market to provide the best value for quality proteins. The butchers at Kirk Market are super helpful. They always slice my steaks perfectly. Kirk Market has everything I need for healthy and flavorful protein-packed meals. From lean cuts of CAB choice beef, tender CAB prime beef, the juiciest pork, and all-natural hormone-free poultry, to their seafood section with everything from fresh local snapper to omega-3 rich salmon. I choose Kirk Market for the highest quality proteins to support my healthy lifestyle. Kirk Market. Eat well, live well, and discover a world of choice.
Hello, pet parents. We're Cayman Vets, Cayman's most advanced veterinary clinic providing quality care and services. We are committed to being your pet's advocate and friend, offering a lifetime of care. From vaccinations and wellness checks to more advanced surgical procedures, complicated medical concerns, and emergency care on demand. For more information about us or to get in touch, please visit caymanvets.com. Cayman Vets, where compassion meets excellence.
At Priced Right, spending less on everyday products is easy.
Spend less on office supplies, tools, and automotive products.
Spend less on groceries, fresh produce, and meat.
Spend less on electronics, TVs, and speakers.
Spend less on home furnishings, beauty products, and apparel.
At Priced Right, we believe you can live better for less.
To start saving, visit us at the Airport Center in Georgetown or at Republix Plaza in West Bay.
For more info, visit pricedright.ky. Live better for less at Priced Right.
Enter to win Ashley's monthly $1,000 giveaway with any purchase now through December 2024. A winner every month. Don't miss out on Ashley Cash. Visit Ashley Furniture Home Store on 360 Dorsey Drive. This is home.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo FM.
And hello, Cayman. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon, and welcome here to Straight Talk, 89.1 FM, Monday through Friday, your two favorite talk show hosts.
Happy Thursday, Cayman. 745-2626 is the number. You can be a part of our daily conversations, whether it's a question or a comment, or surely to take us in a different direction, by all means. The phone lines are yours. Tell us what you want to hear. We're here to hear from you. We're also broadcasting or simulcasting live on YouTube today. Facebook, thank you. Thanks to those 100-plus followers. Today's the first day. We are proudly streaming live from the Facebook platform and, of course, on Instagram at the Rec Room 345. So we're live and direct and as wide as we can be. And I say that word, very timidly, because as I discovered this afternoon, children and old people have the most brutal honesty in their business.
Great similarities. Don't worry, he does the same thing to me. Hey, look at losing hair in the back of your head,
I had the pleasure this afternoon, and I say this with all love in my heart because, as we talked about, Ellio and I have been a dynamic duo for a long time. And during that time, we're more than just work colleagues. We know each other, out of work, we know each other's family. So today I had the distinct pleasure, after far too many moons, to see Ellio's father, Mr. Tim, bless his soul. And the first thing this man says to me the minute he sees me after all these years is, "My boy, but you look well nourished, though."
Look like I've seen more of you.
Yes, I know.
How to win friends and influence people.
How to win friends and influence people.
And by the way, he introduced me to that book, Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Well, I tell you what, he must have missed that page.
Oh, I love him like cook food. I really do. And you know what? Honesty is honesty. Yeah, got a little older, got a little wider, got a little spare tire. But again, God brought Ellio back into my life because I tell you what, I've never met a healthier man in terms of not just, his lifestyle, but what he consumes and all of that. And this didn't start yesterday. It goes back, like I said before, many moons.
Mm-hmm.
So
I know you smiled when I said your favorite talk show host, but it's true. I mean,
true.
Come on, Austin.
It's true. If I had to pick,
all right. If you had to pick two, right?
If I had to pick, my favorite talk show host, you certainly would be in the run-ins.
Oh, I like how you pull him in. I'm not giving too much props, I got to let him know he in the race.
You in the race, for sure. You might not win like the hula hoop competition, but you in the race.
Yeah, well, you go ahead with that hula hoop. She knew what she was getting into.
She knew what she was getting into. Well, coming up at 5 o'clock, it is going to be our privilege to host our first guest here on Straight Talk. If you follow us on Facebook or Instagram, you already know. But if you don't know and just tuning in, it's going to be our pleasure to host the Honorable Deputy Premier, Kenneth Bryan, who will be joining us at the 5 o'clock hour, all the way until 6:30. And we'll be chatting, of course, as we mentioned, about the upcoming referendum vote, the 3 specific questions that the public will be asked, in addition to choosing who your candidate will be for the national election. And we'll also be talking about the controversial issues of the Red Spot Beach there on the waterfront and the Georgetown Revitalization Initiative. So if you're interested to hear about those topics and certainly want to be a part of the conversation, 745-2626 is the number. If you want to share just a comment with us, either a WhatsApp message or a WhatsApp voice note, you can send us a message at 928-2562 to WhatsApp, and of course we'll be happy to receive it there as well. How was your day today?
Well, it was a busy day in terms of meetings.
Was it?
Yeah, lots of meetings, 10 o'clock, and then 12:30, and 2-something, huh?
More Zoom meetings?
Yeah, 2 of them were Zoom meetings.
Yeah.
One was actually in person.
See, I only asked that because it reminded me of the conversation we had yesterday with our last caller, Mario Ebanks.
Mm-hmm.
And again, we talked about, obviously, the work we did together on the Transportation Committee. But, he did at the time, before we had COVID, suggest, one of the ways in which to sort of, reduce traffic was that whole, split hours or telecommuting, working from home.
Mm-hmm.
And at the time, the businesses who were providing feedback to us really looked at us as if, you had 3 heads.
Right.
Kind of like when the whole topic of minimum wage was first discussed way back when. And I think you and I were at the forefront of that conversation when it started as well. But at the time, it seemed just, that's never going to work. Thank you for the idea, but, we live in the real world, not Disney World. And then COVID hit.
Mm-hmm.
And then, necessity is the mother of invention. We were placed in that position. The economy still had to go on, but we couldn't go into the office. What do? We telecommuted. We worked from home. And that worked just fine. And how did we get over the, again, sales meeting? Zoom came out. And we did everything also online with that same webcam, but from home. So,
right.
It's amazing what we can accomplish if we just, frankly, get out of our own way.
Put our minds to it.
Quite right.
But, thinking or chatting about that, Austin, I think we need an official think tank or two.
Oh, without a doubt.
Because if you think about it, Hurricane Ivan came along. I think you had another one. They had COVID. You know, but where is the deliberate effort to sit down, get groups of persons together and really discuss these issues and see what is it that we have learned from these events?
Yeah.
One things we can do to avoid it in the future. How do we benefit from this in every way?
Yeah.
You know, what are some of the good things we learned? What are some of the bad things? Yeah. Like I remember coming after Hurricane Ivan and seeing a watermark. I remember it was passing by, I'll mention the name, A.L. Thompson's fence. You could see where the water had risen.
Right, right.
You know, and I just remember thinking at that point in time, I think somebody really needs to do a proper sit down and really see what it is that we have learned and what changes we can make to be better prepared for another Hurricane Ivan. And I think COVID is the same way. You know, like I was involved a little bit towards the tail end with Travel Cayman. And again, it was the same thing I recommended.
Fantastic organization, by the way. They really did a fantastic job during that COVID pandemic.
And I think the recommendation was, and they seem to move in that direction again, is preparing and making sure that we have all the lessons, all the things that we've learned. It's packaged, it's rated.
Correct.
And the next time in the event, if the next time, hopefully it doesn't, but you have to be prepared, then the rollout of things can be a lot quicker and easier because you haven't lost from all the things that you've learned. You've retained it.
Well, you know, I commend you. I think it is a fantastic idea. Certainly, to your point, you know, very relevant. And maybe, as time goes on, this is something that, at the very least, we can't convince the powers to be to, obviously, you know, fully embrace the notion. We started ourselves.
Yeah. Well, who knows? We started a think tank of two.
Straight talk think tank.
There you go. I like that. I like how the ring to it.
It's a great idea, and you know what? You know, start.
Do you realize? I mean, the impact. I was listening one time to someone talking about the success on their business, etc., and they kind of overlooked something because just on COVID, do you realize the tremendous impact that it had on bringing people to the internet? There was a big major lag about coming on the internet, but COVID really kind of forced everyone to get online. And as a result of this, the bentos, all these food service, a lot of them thrive because of that. I remember, wasn't it Fine Dine?
Yes, Fine Dine In.
Fine Dine was a good idea.
Sure it was.
It was just, we could probably say ahead of its time because at that point in time, you didn't have the internet and the flow it is.
Right.
Like when I started K-Politics, we were renting a T1 line from a company in the U.S., as far as I recall, it was Espire, and I think the price was somewhere around $1,200 a month.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you have people practically having that in their homes now.
Yes.
And it's $150.
That's right.
Versus $1,200.
That's right.
You know, to get access to K-Politics at a point in time, you had to hear a noise. Beep, 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 beep. People dying up on 16, you know, and 32 kilobits or whatever it is.
Dial-up modems again.
That's it.
You start to ring first. Yes,
right.
yes.
So there's a lot of things.
Come a long way, baby.
Come a long way, baby. So there's a lot of these things that come along in life and make changes. And I think COVID was one of those game changers. And I think that maybe we've walked away individually thinking about some of these things, but I don't know of a real collective effort. And maybe this is something my good friend Will at Chamber might be able to get going, you know, whoever it is. But hopefully you need government involved as well. But you really need to have a sit down and make sure that there's a real comprehensive process to look at all these lessons, because I'm sure there's a lot of things we haven't really paid attention to that we could indeed learn from.
Absolutely.
You know, like you talk about flexible hours. Well, you could probably not have got a politician to try flexible hours. Like that's a career, you know, that's not going to benefit your political career. But COVID brought it about. And we have an opportunity to say, does it work or doesn't it work? I mean, we were lining up in supermarkets based on your last name. Right? So there's a lot of things you can learn. What about how people responded to it? What was those points where enough was enough? Bear in mind that we were under a curfew. Technically, as far as I'm concerned, we were in breach of the law because I've never heard of, I don't think the law accommodates a curfew beyond, 48 hours or something, you know. Mm-hmm. Oh, you guys are under a curfew for the next 6 weeks. Yeah. And nobody complained. So you actually were in breach of the law.
Yeah.
But hey.
Yeah. All right.
The public was saying, yeah, this is all for our good, so we'll sit quietly.
Sure.
So there's a lot of things we can learn. Sounds like we got a caller? All right.
No, we don't have a caller
But
at
you
all.
just had a reaction there.
No, I was just adjusting in my seat again. You know, when you get on a roll, Ellio, and you're really making a solid point,
it makes you move in your seat.
I just want to get comfortable. If I could break out the popcorn, I would, buddy. I love listening to you
I
talk.
appreciate that,
I love
Austin.
listening to you talk.
Yeah, but you know, I think it would be a good exercise, and so I would encourage anyone that, again, government officials, again, interesting bodies like the Chamber of Commerce. Let's see if we can put a group together like that, because I believe just those two events, game changers for Cayman, at least in our lifetime, Hurricane Ivan and COVID, and I think we have a lot that we can walk away learning. And we should be able to collate that information, and the public should be able to have access to that too, and see what exactly have we learned, and what therefore can we do to mitigate things in the future.
Well, listen, you know, we know climate change is real. We know the intensity of hurricanes. Every hurricane season.
Well, I wouldn't want to
getting more
suggest that I
intense.
agree with that, Austin.
You know, we look at what's happening on 7 Mile Beach, obviously with the sand erosion. We also know historically, you know, that sand, what God takes, He, you know, gives back.
Brings it back. No,
But we also have known for a long time that building on the beach, on the water line, creating blockages, you know, has always resulted in the same thing. But we do it anyway, expecting things will be different. Certainly, one of the ideas now facing the condos, the hotels, and everyone else in 7 Mile Beach are setbacks.
Right.
But it is, again, as a direct result of climate change. And the setbacks, to your point, could very well represent what's happened, what have we learned from what has happened, and what do we need to do to build resiliency into our plan for the future.
And hearing you say that, for example, brings back again the argument we've been making for the last 2 days, which is we're talking now about modifications and changes to signage on the roads, right? Now, we have some questions with that, but do we have some similar change that's been made already to the planning law in terms of setbacks for buildings on the beach? Probably not.
Well, I know it's been proposed. I don't know whether it's
proposed a long time ago. But I mean, even as a result of what
most recently,
most recent.
Yeah, and this whole I think it started largely with Royal Palms Beach.
You mean with the public saying this?
With the government and the public saying it. A recommendation has come.
So I wonder then if we have a change,
suggesting that setbacks are a necessary solution. And of course, when Mr. Handel Whitaker was talking about the rebuilding of Royal Palms and Royal Palms Beach. And how to preserve the beach, and also given reference to, say, Coral Beach right next door to it, the common denominator in those conversations were you built too close to the water line. So you need to set back, I think it's anywhere from 8 to 10 feet, and then rebuild from there. And that is certainly a real legitimate recommendation. Whether it goes anywhere or not, again, we'll have to wait until most likely the next administration. But it is still a very live issue.
Yeah, and just hearing you say that, I'd like to give kudos to two persons as well. I think it was the young man running in Georgetown West. What's his name? Hunter Walton. He was one of the persons, again, identifying the whole issue about beach erosion, again, making it, I mean, everybody kind of knew about it, but he was out there broadcasting things on a somewhat regular basis. Then you have Ada Thompson, who was bringing this whole issue about all the vendors, et cetera, and stuff on the beach, and the smoking of the marijuana. But all of these things are honestly topics that we need to discuss as a society, and we need to find solutions.
Absolutely.
Because I'm of two minds to some extent. One is I think that we should be able to give Caymanians, in a quotation mark, an opportunity to be able to get some access to those persons on the beach and the van. But it has to be done in a good way that you're not going to have the crowding and stuff that I'm hearing. Unfortunately, it's been a while. I haven't been to the beach, but I need to check it out. But, we can't have this place looking like, I don't know, some other parts of the world. We want that peace and tranquility and to be able to have a good product, not just for the tourists, but even for ourselves,
Yes.
Everybody wants to have that kind of little spot you can pitch out on Sunday and relax.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. No, you make a very good point. And again, these are discussions that we need to look at holistically and apply real solutions to after thinking about them, rather than, of course, the little Band-Aid approaches. But there are oftentimes in every big issue, as you like to say, some low-hanging fruit that you can start with. And, that is also encouraging. Because you don't want to, I think we talked about Vision 2008, and then we talked about the development plan also in recent episodes. We talked about the efforts that have gone into that. But in terms of the actual future planning, we haven't really stuck to some of those recommendations. And again, we keep regurgitating old ideas and bringing them back again, quote unquote. We talk about the immigration reform and the current white paper out there and asking the work permit holder who's released from one permit to leave the island for a year. If you didn't know better, you'd think, oh, that's a new idea, but it's not. It's a regurgitation of an old idea. But my point is that we have to, thinking of what should happen doesn't seem to be the problem. It is that letting the rubber hit the road and implementing those solutions that have been, proposed by a group of people, a democracy, more to the point, where we have wider involvement. Putting those solutions into action has always been our Achilles heel, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I'll give you one. I mentioned this at the Chamber of Commerce Forum as well. I don't remember the exact numbers, but we created the digital nomad visa.
Yes.
Right? It might have been called something else in Cayman. I can't remember. I think it was like GCCP or something like that. Which that name sounds scary.
You're the
but
tech
anyway,
guy. You're the tech guy.
Yeah, but basically it was accommodating for digital nomads, right? So persons who can work from their office, mobile, et cetera, et cetera. And I think we were able to attract over 140-something thousand of those persons.
Mm-hmm.
Why did it shut down after COVID?
Yeah.
Like, it's a good thing. It's working.
Sure.
And where does that industry, where is the possibility for that industry to grow? Whereas I think it was Trinidad, I think it might have been Trinidad that actually initially started. I think they still have a program going, or Barbados or one of those places.
Okay.
But bottom line is, I just don't understand this kind of harem scarum. I have no idea what's motivating people and where's this vision. So I have, again, of two minds. I say sometimes you have two minds, you have no mind at all, but that's a scary thought. But I believe that there's a place for plans, but I know a lot of times that's used as an excuse. Oh, we shouldn't do anything. We shouldn't do anything about cruise tourism. We shouldn't do anything about this. We need a plan. And, if you sit around planning all day, you'll get nothing done. And I think you need to work towards a plan, but there's some things that it's obvious, it's common sense. Like, I don't need to have a plan to say I'm not satisfied that I have 2,000 people vending on the beach. Mm-hmm. Do I really need a plan? I think we can all start to make efforts to say, listen, yeah, for some reason we don't necessarily want pot being smoked here. We don't want people being hassled on the beach. There's certain things that we can do. And I'm also a firm believer from at least 55 years of experience that it's oftentimes when you start doing something that you start to find the solutions. One, let's pretend you have a neighbor that's looking at you and you want to move a big, huge boulder. It's only when he sees you trying to move that big, huge boulder that he goes, I think Austin's trying to move the boulder.
Maybe I should help.
Hey, I have a bulldozer, I can help. But he would not have known that you needed help until you started, right? So can you imagine if you had been stuck in the planning stage on moving a big boulder in your yard? Well, you'd be screwed because your neighbor wouldn't be able to help you on that plan, right? And I think it's also another scenario that the moment you start doing things start to identify itself that this can help me, that can help me,
Sure. Sure.
It's almost like you're tuning in. I gave somebody this example. I'll end with this. We were talking about prayer and the power of prayer, and I said, to me it's a bit like radio stations. There's probably at least 13 different worlds going on at this point in time.
Yes.
But when you pray, you start tuning into a specific radio station, and that becomes the world. And I say it's the same thing.
Frequency.
That's the frequency that I'm tuning into.
Yeah.
And therefore, even though there's other worlds going on around you, that's the one that you're attuned to. I think it's something very similar with when we start to take action about something and not just talking.
Sure.
We start tuning into a specific frequency, and the things that are necessary starts to identify itself, and we can take the necessary action to get there.
Absolutely.
So where we all agree with planning, because I'm talking about think tank, I'm talking about understanding where it is and being able to make plans for the future.
Sure.
I'm a very action-oriented person also.
Yeah,
Let's get something done.
Well, I believe very firmly in the saying, be the change you
Wish to see in the world.
Want to see in the world, indeed. So I absolutely embrace the notion of
I love it, man. I love it when we agree, Austin.
think tank, and I think, if somebody else doesn't grab up this hot tamale of a good idea, then we should kick it off.
We'll move it on ourselves, right? Straight top think tank.
Indeed. 745-2626. We're about 6 minutes shy of taking our first commercial break and checking in with the BBC News here on Bobo FM. But coming up at 5:06, and we know it will be exactly at 5:06, because it has been exactly 5:06 every day since we started going on the air, that we will be joined by the Honorable Deputy Premier, Honorable Kenneth Bryan, who will be
floating like a butterfly,
here
like
on
a
Straight
bee.
Talk, but certainly not our last. And we hope the listening audience will benefit from that discussion. Just want to stick
a pin
off topic from obviously the rather high level think tank notion, but again, sticking with our track record of maintaining a positive approach, we want to We want people to be in a good space leading into our 5 o'clock major topic discussion. So we, again, bring you good news. And you were just talking about the climate and, what have we learned from Hurricane Ivan and what we, learned for the future.
Yeah.
Good news in the news. The sustainability ministry recently partnered with the National Tree Planting Program that started in 2022 and planted 710 native and endemic trees and plants on the grounds of government primary schools and public spaces across the island in recent times. And I just think that is, again, a fantastic initiative. Not only does it teach, because they're going in primary schools and kids are going to ask, ooh, what's that? Ooh, what's that? Teaches children about conservation, about nature, about the importance that nature plays in the world around us, least of all the air that we breathe. But it is also a means of giving back to that, without sounding too hippie, that earth that we develop all of the time. Again, to balance what we take, we also give back. Now, 710 native plants and trees, in primary schools and public open spaces may seem like a drop in the bucket. But when we look at the notion of Georgetown revitalization, and we mentioned Camana Bay, the whole town planning, when you have an opportunity to actually plan in advance how you want this town to look like, but still feel like an island town that embraces both the modern conveniences as well as the environment and the public, open, quiet spaces, you very easily can appreciate that this notion of simple planting of trees can really take off and be a part of a much wider effort. And I'm delighted to see that the ministry level is involved in it. I'm even more delighted that they're taking this initiative to the schools, the primary schools, and getting that sort of spirit ingrained, principle, character that's ingrained in our young people as they grow up. Because it's these little things you learn along life's road that stick with you and become a part of you. And you do it naturally because you live here too, right?
Yeah, and I'm definitely one that believes in having a wonderful environment, green environment. If you've been around my place, you see I have all the big trees there. It's beautiful. And I think the environment is sacred, but it's a situation that it must be sacred, not to be worshipped. And I think that it is unfortunate when you have people carrying it to a point that they forget that human beings is a part of that environment.
Correct.
Yeah, if you ever listen to some of these persons, the dogs, the cats, the lions, everything is part of the environment and everything. When the lion kills the zebra, but you see, you got to look at the ecological benefits of this. There's a symbiotic relationship between these two. But as soon as a human,
bigly Donald Trump.
Yeah, this is kind of my bigly. Yeah, you got it. But the moment you talk about humans, oh no, they're destroying the environment. And I'm just saying it needs to be a balance. I think at the end of the day, if anything, it was meant to be our slave, not our master.
Yeah, no, I agree with you 100%.
And we don't build houses without cutting a tree down, I can tell you, buddy.
We do have to live in balance, and the environment is one of those areas that we must find balance. And, again, we won't get there tomorrow. We won't get there alone. It's something we're going to have to do together. But it starts with making a commitment, a plan, maintaining a standard, I think, was probably one of the overarching points my colleague was making earlier on in terms of, what does a solution look like for whether it be beach vendors or bus drivers or whatever. Planning regulations. Let's create the solution, set the standard, and then follow that path wherever it leads.
How much time do we have left?
1 minute, 15 seconds.
Okay, within 1 minute, 15 seconds, on the whole issue of planning, I don't remember all the specifics of this, and it might actually have even been a story that was made up. Who knows? But apparently, in this hypothetical scenario, worst case, it was a university, and they were trying to figure out where they're going to put the sidewalks. And so some wise person said, well, let's not just sit here and plan and think we know it all. I'll tell you what we do. Why don't we just let the students loose and follow the footsteps? So basically let them loose, and the kids were going all over the place to their classes, and then you saw all the tracks. And then the guy goes, well, no, you know where you have to build your sidewalks. And so I think a lot of times the point of it is that if we sit back and watch things, it will show us a lot of times where we kind of have to go. But progress is made by always sacrificing something. We have to sacrifice a little bit of our time, even some of our efforts, even some of our money, and in the same way a tree. But cutting a tree down doesn't mean that we don't care about our environment. It just means at the end of the day that we understand that we are equally a part of that environment.
Very well said. And that's how we're going to end it. We're going to pause, take a quick look at the BBC News. But when we come back, the Honourable Deputy Premier will be our guest right here on Straight Talk on Bobo FM.
The BBC's From Our Own Correspondent.
In today's Russia, no one is allowed anywhere near the political stage if they pose a serious challenge to Vladimir Putin.
Stories and reflections from our reporters around the world.
There is a major sense of insecurity here. More people are coming in from Sudan every day.
From Our Own Correspondent from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
How can we understand the world better?
The BBC World Service is a window onto the wider world.
The vantage point from which to survey a new horizon.
News, reports, and analysis from around the world.
Stories we think matter.
Different people from different societies.
We get to the heart of global issues.
News, stories, and global perspectives from the BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
The BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
The BBC World Service makes programs with a uniquely global perspective.
Enlighten us. Where do we start?
The latest world news and current affairs.
The very best in global arts and culture.
What has been happening on the financial markets today.
Social issues, political stories.
Everything was there in a way that I never heard before.
The BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo FM, powered by Doctors Hospital. 24/7 urgent care, located in Georgetown at the top of Walker's Road. Introducing the Doctors Hospital Specialty Clinic, conveniently located in the Strand. To book your appointment at Doctors Hospital, call 325-9000. Across Cayman on 89.1 FM, online and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
This is Danielle Yawowiecka with the BBC News. Hello. The US National Security Advisor Mike Waltz has said that Ukraine needs to tone down its criticism of the United States as he repeated President Trump's demand that Kyiv sign a deal for access to Ukrainian mineral resources to pay for US support in the war. Here's Merlin Thomas.
The Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky said that President Donald Trump had been taken in by Russian disinformation after the American leader falsely accused Ukraine of starting the war with Russia. Mr. Trump then went on to call Mr. Zelensky a dictator. Mike Waltz wouldn't directly answer a question about who started the war in Ukraine, and also dodged a question about whether President Trump sees the Russian president as a dictator. Mr. Waltz reiterated that Ukraine needed to come back to the table after President Zelensky rejected proposals to allow the US to access Ukraine's mineral resources as a way of repaying US military aid.
In Kyiv, Mr. Zelensky met the US envoy Keith Kellogg, describing his meeting with Mr. Kellogg as productive. The Republican-controlled US Senate has voted to confirm President Trump's nominee, Kash Patel, as head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. His nomination sparked fierce but ultimately futile opposition from Democrats. Mr. Patel was approved by 51 votes to 49. Nomia Iqbal reports.
To Republicans, 44-year-old Kash Patel is a disruptor who will shake up the nation's top law enforcement agency, which they and Donald Trump allege has been corrupted. But to Democrats, he is a far-right conspiracy theorist with little experience in law enforcement and someone who would put fealty to the president over his responsibilities to lead a department that is meant to operate independently. One Democratic senator said Republicans would come to regret this vote to their grave. Kash Patel worked for President Trump in his first term and had promised to go after his enemies if he ever ran the FBI, comments he walked back during his hearing.
Thousands of Israelis have gathered in Tel Aviv's Hostages Square and observed a minute's silence following Hamas's handover of the bodies of 4 hostages. Israeli forensic experts are still trying to officially verify that 3 of the 4 are, as claimed by Hamas, a mother and her 2 young children. They've confirmed that the other body is that of the veteran peace activist Oded Lifshitz. These people at the Tel Aviv vigil expressed their frustration at their government's failure to bring back all the hostages alive.
The feeling of very, very disappointment of the government of Israel that not taking responsibility till now. The very, very not responsible government we have, unfortunately.
Only sad feelings. The feeling that they could have been brought back alive, and now they're not. And there's no way of taking us back.
World News from the BBC. Israel's Defence Minister Israel Katz says he's ordered the military to step up its offensives across the occupied West Bank after 3 empty buses exploded in parking lots near Tel Aviv. There have been no reports of injuries. 2 more bombs were found on buses and defused. Local media reported that one of the defused bombs had writing mentioning the Tulkurum refugee camp in the West Bank. A UN report says that at current growth rates, Syria's economy will take more than 50 years to return to pre-conflict levels due to the devastating effect of the country's civil war. The UN's development programme says the 14-year conflict destroyed much of Syria's infrastructure, and this was compounded by heavy sanctions imposed on the former Assad regime. Bolivia's former president, Evo Morales, has announced he'll run for office again in August's election, defying a ban imposed by the Constitutional Court. Mr. Morales served as president for 13 years until his resignation in 2019. Leonardo Rocha reports.
Mr. Morales has secured the nomination from a small party, Front for Victory, after falling out with President Luis Arce, his former economy minister and once one of his closest allies. The two have engaged in a public and bitter fight for the right to represent the movement for socialism in the August presidential election. Mr. Morales, who founded the party, was effectively banned from the race by Bolivia's Constitutional Court, which last year issued a ruling limiting the number of terms presidents can serve.
After more than 6 decades, the Broccoli family will no longer have creative control over one of the most lucrative film franchises, the James Bond movies. They'll now be produced by Amazon MGM Studios, which was formed 3 years ago. The new deal follows mounting speculation about the fate of the fictional British spy. And those are the latest stories from BBC News.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo FM.
And welcome back, K-Man. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon. And welcome back to Straight Talk. And as promised, we have a guest here in the studio, Mr. Harris.
We certainly do. Our very first guest on this program. It is a auspicious occasion, to say the least.
There you go.
And it's certainly our pleasure to host the Honorable Deputy Premier, our good friend, Kenneth Bryan. Mr. Bryan, thank you so much for agreeing to be on Straight Talk and to be put in the history books as the first. You planted your flag here first. Tell the world. Welcome, sir.
Thank you so much, Austin and Ellio, both of you gentlemen. Thank you so much, and thank you to your listening audience. It's a pleasure to be here. It's great to see actually another talk show during the evening and creating the balance. I actually must say that the banter between you two over the last couple of weeks has been interesting. But good, you know. I think the contrast.
Entertaining, maybe.
Entertaining is definitely one part of it too.
Entertaining is a word.
Yes. But yeah, this is positive. Particularly around the election time too.
Yes.
The more information available for people to make their choices is essential and important to the democratic process. So I'm happy to be here.
Indeed. Well, certainly to the listening audience, hopefully you're happy as well. We hope to cover some significant territory today, but as always, the phone lines will remain open to the listening audience, 745-2626. If you have a question or a comment on the topics that we have selected this evening, which begin with the referendum vote and the questions that will be asked leading up on April 30th for the general elections. We will also talk about some of the sticky aspects of the Red Spot Beach and, of course, any questions or conversations that may surround the Georgetown Revitalization Initiative. If we have time at the end of that mouthful of a conversation and there are other initiatives, then by all means, we welcome them. I'm sure the Honorable Minister does. But to the topic, shall we begin?
Yes.
Minister, you gave truly a passionate, as usual, contributions to the House during the debate on the referendum, cruise berthing, infrastructure, gambling, and cannabis bill, now law, I think 2024, which did basically, set the rules in place for the referendum to be held on the same day that we go to the polls to elect our next government, but specifically to 3 very specific questions. And for a time there, it seemed like that referendum wasn't going to happen, maybe because some thought it was a bit controversial. But, thanks to, how should we say, more well-intended and calmer minds, we sat down and said, you know what, this is necessary. Let's make it happen. So talk to us a little bit about, of course, the work that went into bringing the bill and your thoughts on its passage.
Well, I must say I'm very excited about the opportunity. I think that I too was concerned about whether it would actually eventually get there, but it's there now. And regardless of its outcome, I think doing this for the first time in this particular way with a particular subject matter, the last ones were about the Constitution and about how we vote, which are non-controversial. Well, they're controversial, but there's no disagreement about we had to do them. These ones were a disagreement about whether we should do that or not. And I think then what will transpire after it passes or whether it fails is they'll see it's another tool in the arsenal of decision-making in the Cayman Islands, and people will be more willing to put things to the people and ultimately have a more participatory democracy. So I'm excited about that in its principle, regardless of what the outcome is on each topic. I think I've expressed how I felt about all 3 topics and why the government decided to do so numerous times, and there's going to be a campaign done by the comms department that will be released very soon. So the public will be seeing more stuff on different media platforms, social, paper, in real life debates and so forth. So we're almost to that 8-week mark, and they're going to try to do what you call a blitz marketing. There's been so much discussion about the 3 topics already, plus with that concentrated effort of information around the 3 topics will be enough for people to be informed enough to make the call.
Well, that's going to be certainly my follow-up question. Do you feel comfortable that there, in fact, has been enough public consultation, public conversation on the 3 specific questions that will be asked during the referendum? And with your permission, I'll just read them directly from the bill. The 3 questions will be, should the Cayman Islands develop cruise berthing infrastructure? Do you support the introduction of a national lottery in the Cayman Islands? And do you support the decriminalization of the consumption and possession of small amounts of cannabis? So those are the questions. And again, to my question, do you believe that the public has in fact had sufficient opportunity to ventilate these topics, and therefore the information, the educational process that regrettably will start a month, 2 months before they go to the polls, will that be enough, you think, confidently, to secure at least, number one, a good voter turnout, and hopefully some way of a direction, yay or nay?
I definitely would say yes, particularly with the cruise one. I'm not sure how much more talking we can do about this topic. There's people who would disagree with that, but I feel satisfied. And I think it's more of a reminder of the facts and information around it that is going to be necessary over the next 8 weeks. The other 2, I think it's general knowledge in respect to the space, particularly with marijuana consumption, and what the terminology of decriminalization is probably the most unclear part. And I want to talk about that a little bit today.
Sure.
But the topics are not new. There's not brand spanking new to the world. This is a global thing with marijuana consumption and decriminalization components. In respect to a national lottery, I'm almost certain every Caymanian has either bought a number or know somebody who bought a number or know somebody who sold a number.
I'm buying a number right now.
So it's become a part of almost second nature in Cayman and generally accepted. And not only that, but this discussion, particularly with those last 2, with the marijuana decriminalization and the national lottery, was something that was discussed with the previous premier. You would recall that we brought the motion for those first 2 in year 2 of the PAC administration, and then Honorable Premier Wayne Panton. And he did an excellent job explaining the reasons for it. So For those who may think that this is this administration's support, the Park administration, which included Andre Ebanks, which included Wayne Panton, which included Miss Catherine Wilkes and Miss Sabrina Turner and Miss Heather Bodden, were all in support of a referendum for those two matters. It's
and
just
I think
that,
to your point, it was largely majority across the House, across the aisle. The opposition also large. There was strong support for the whole notion from everyone, if I remember the vote.
yes, it was.
There was a handful of folks that abstained or didn't show up.
No, it was so it was unanimously supported.
Yes.
I must say that the only one that was an abstention was the now Speaker, the Honourable Sir Alan McLaughlin.
Right.
And he abstained on the basis of a technicality in one of the motions back 2 years ago.
Okay.
And I also want to clarify, because I just said that all members was in support. The Honourable Catherine Ebanks Wilkes was the Speaker at that time, so she wouldn't vote, but she did give her support to it. And also, before she left, agreed that she would support this referendum going forward. The change of position as a result, and they've expressed the reasons why in Parliament later on. I think it was mainly on the basis of the cruise peer perspective. But I don't want to get into the challenging them. I just want to give information today. So to ask your original question, which is, do I think the public is informed enough? Is there adequate enough? There's never enough. As much information as you can possibly give. But I think there's enough for people to make a good informative decision. And based on the sentiment that I'm feeling and people are talking about, I think people feel comfortable enough about it. But there's probably the only one place that I would like to clarify today, and it's particularly for a lot of the seniors, because most of the seniors in our community wouldn't have been as familiar with decriminalization in the Cayman context. And for those who may not be, who are against marijuana consumption in its entirety, may think that when we say decriminalization of marijuana, we're promoting smoking marijuana. This has actually nothing to do with marijuana at all. It actually has to do with a piece of paper, your record. So when I think about it, and I thought about what I was going to say when I came here, so I want the listening audience to go through an exercise with me. So a police officer sees a young woman smoking marijuana in option 1 where it's illegal and it's criminal. They see him on the road, they stop him. Hey, you're arrested. You have possession of marijuana. You are charged. You go to court. The court finds you guilty. You get a criminal record. That's with it being illegal. We're now trying to change it to make it decriminalized. Same process is going to happen except one part. And I'm going to do it again. So now the law has changed and it's decriminalized in small amounts. The officer sees you on the side of the road smoking. They still arrest you. They still lock you up. They still charge you. You go to court. You're found guilty. And you may pay your fine, or, God forbid, they send you to prison for 2 weeks or a month. But the difference with decriminalization is the judge will not then now put it on your record that you have a criminal offense.
Right.
That's the only difference. So we're not talking about marijuana at all. It's just that the marijuana consumption amounts determine whether you get the record or not.
The penalty.
The penalty.
Speaking of penalty, what happens? Is there incarceration under the first scenario and no incarceration?
Well, it's the judge's discretion. So
does it normally?
Normally you don't.
Okay.
I'm just saying that, you could be.
But it definitely goes on your record.
But it definitely goes on your record.
But and to my colleague's point, I'm sure whilst it may be the judge's discretion, the amount of cannabis the person is arrested being in possession of also will play a role in terms of what that sentencing would be, which leads me to ask the question, again, when we talk about public education, is the absence of defining what small amounts of cannabis means also serving maybe perhaps as a confusing factor? Should I vote yes? Should I vote no? How much is a misdemeanor? How much is hard jail time?
Yeah. That's a legitimate...
Killing rocks type thing, you know what I mean?
That's a legitimate question because your small amount and my small amount may be two different small amounts.
Correct.
But what I did say in Parliament in respect to the government's position is we leave that to the technocrats to decide, which is the police. The police would then, say hypothetically, this motion was passed or this referendum bill was passed in respect to the decriminalization of marijuana. Then I would assume if I was a part of the government, then you would take it to the police commissioner and say, what would you consider to be a small amount of marijuana? And then you would draft that into a bill and bring it to Parliament for it then to be passed.
Right.
So there's a second shot at saying, okay, I'm not, Mr. Walton, I don't think that's too much. We need to make it smaller. So there's going to be public consultation again when the legislation is done. But you have regional examples to use what small amounts are, and they range across the jurisdiction in different quantities. And I don't want to speak to I don't want to give a number today because I think that would be inappropriate. But what I'll say to you, though, is that the comms team that is sending out this comms plan will be talking about what small amounts look like in the region in other nations that are similar to us in size, similar to us in background of Commonwealth or independent and so forth. But the most important thing to me is that those who are listening know this is not about marijuana itself and its consumption. This is about a record that you give to an individual because they were smoking marijuana. And we don't want to have persons penalized even further. So I don't think the intention of a penalty for such a crime would be one of long, forever and all your life lasting on you. So, and I think it's important that I clarify 2 points. One, that we were just speaking about whether it happens now when you get a criminal record. I must say the Honorable Chief Justice, Ms. Ramsey Hale, really has done a great job reforming how the justice system approaches persons with small amounts. They offer you the opportunity to go through a drug program, a rehabilitation program for a period of time, and if you complete that, then they will say, we will not record this on your record. Right. So there is opportunity there for it not to be on your record at all. But that's discretionary based on the judge. And the other part that I need to clarify is that some people believe that there is the expungement law that says, well, okay then, Kenneth, if a person gets caught with marijuana, in 5 years and cleaning up, and maybe that 5 years is part of the penalty for knowing not to do this. And I thought about that, and that is true. That may be a part of the penalty to say, you know what, now your life is ruined for 5 years because you did something stupid. Perhaps. But what people don't recognize, and this is where the personal component came in for me, because my own life I've experienced, I had a criminal record, but my record is clean now, whereby this goes past any expungement period, because we're talking about immigration-related matters, leaving the country for leisure, for trade, for business, for medical purposes, which is one of the ones I'm most scared about. Because what I'm worried about one day is there's going to be a Caymanian who needs life-saving medication, and just because they made a mistake and they had some marijuana of small amounts, and they have that record, the United States says, nope, you can't come into my country. I will not give you a visa, a waiver, or an ESTA. And regardless of whether your record is clean now, how their system works, it says, whenever you apply for these things, have you ever had a criminal record? Not if your record is clear. So you have to be honest. So, and it never used to be like that. It used to say, do you have a clean police record? But what they found is that countries were doing expungement legislation like the one that we have, and they weren't getting a clear picture of what the person is like and what their history was like. So now they've reworded the language in your application. So a person with a clean police record who had a record before can't get away with, oh, I'm clean and whistle and give me a visa. And that's what a lot of Caymanians are being faced with. So going back to the example of what I don't want to happen is one day a Caymanian's life is lost because of a small mistake. And that's not the intended consequences that we want to discipline people, because we don't want people smoking marijuana. That's a no-no. But we don't want it to be an effect where they can't get a job, they can't save their life medically, or they just say, you know what, I want to go with my family and my kids, or my children are graduating from university and I can't go and see them graduate. I think we don't want to penalize people even further. And one of the parts that is really, really disturbing for me, this is probably one of the biggest ones. Somebody can come from California to the Cayman Islands right now, where smoking marijuana is not illegal. They don't have a criminal record at all. Now, you will never know that. They can apply for a work permit, have a clean police record, but a same Caymanian who may have smoked marijuana in their life, have a record, and they can't get the jobs. Like, we got to stop putting these hurdles in the way for Caymanians for work opportunity. Sure. Again, you recognize that I'm saying I'm not endorsing people to smoke marijuana. I don't smoke marijuana. I've never smoked marijuana in my life. And I know the effects it has, but it's no different in my mind than an alcoholic, right? It's substance abuse, right? And I don't agree with that. But what I don't want to support is lifelong effects on a human life. And when I know that other people coming from different jurisdictions, getting job opportunities, not being asked about whether their record, have you been convicted before, you'll never know, because in most jurisdictions in modern countries now, marijuana in small amounts is a misdemeanor.
Yes.
So it's not recorded for you to see.
Right.
Just a quick question and maybe a comment as well, but you talked about earlier on, I mean, putting a committee together or passing some of that information on to the police who would be in one of the group of persons making a decision. I would imagine you would probably have a committee that might be also consistent of persons from the medical industry that might be saying what's a reasonable amount that would, a person could consume without impairing their driving or other vehicles, for example.
That's actually a great suggestion. I never thought about it, but so to have medical input would definitely be great, and more so from the perspective of what is reasonable for somebody to consume, and also if a person has more than X amount in their possession, are you really doing it for personal consumption? Because right now, the prosecution's office, along with the police, have to make determinations on persons found with quantities of marijuana anyway when they're doing their filing of charges. So if somebody arrested and they got 2 marijuana cigarettes, I call them the marijuana, they call them spliffs. So if they got caught with 2 marijuana spliffs, the police and the prosecution will have to make a determination to say, okay, that's probably just for himself. But if they found them with, a quarter pound of marijuana, they say, okay, then not for yourself. You obviously potentially could be considered supplying. So they make a determination based on, I guess, expert advice and what happens in the drug world to determine whether they're going to charge you for personal consumption or they're charging you with supplying. So whatever determination they use, that's why I say use the police. The police do it every day. Tell them what to tell us what is considered personal consumption. So whatever threshold gets you from personal consumption to supplying, that should be the amount. And I don't know what that is. So I mean, that's what.
So again, that's for clarity for those persons who might have concerns there. If you're talking about those personable amounts, it would definitely mean that someone with a significant quantity to be defined as a supplier clearly is not going to benefit from that.
No. So they would still be subject to a criminal component. Right. That's not considered a misdemeanor.
Correct.
And that's something probably people are more comfortable with or understand, the misdemeanor definition. So this is, you're right.
Yeah, so I have another question now, and I think this one is going to be a little bit leading, because there are naturally going to be persons who will be concerned that once you decriminalize it, in the sense that it doesn't go on the record, where they understand the benefits of what you're trying to achieve, will state it is still a step in the direction. So in other words, it's very taboo to many people. They're not getting into it because I don't want that criminal record. And if they do it, maybe they do it in California. But now, the moment you decriminalize it to the sense that the person doesn't get it on their record, it's a little bit less taboo. I really won't, kind of get a little spank on the hand. So you might be encouraging it, and are we working closer towards legalization?
Yeah, well, I mean, I've heard that argument, and I can't dispute it, because I've actually heard people say, you know what, if you decriminalize it, I might take the risk, because I do smoke it overseas. So I can't get away from that reality. But I see that position, and I see the other one. Which one is more important?
Doesn't change what you're trying to achieve.
It doesn't change what I'm trying to achieve. Now, what I think can help with that, though, is that the fines and penalties right now for small amounts is minuscule. I personally believe that, particularly with the benefit of not having it on your record, increase the fines. You know what I mean? Triple it, quadruple it if you have to continue that pressure on not endorsing it. But as a deterrent. But don't ruin their life forever for that. That's what I believe.
That's the trade-off.
That's the trade-off.
Speaking about deterrence, and obviously you would probably not have the specifics of this, because clearly the government now and in the future will be looking for a direction. Specific committees and rules and stuff will be made later on. But you can just speak to it generally. In terms of the person smoking a spliff, do you think there might be a possibility where you say, okay, you've got 2 spankings, like that 3 strikes you're out program? Because, in other words, the law was done. It was there to accommodate persons that may have experimented with it.
Yeah.
You don't want to ruin this young girl's life or boy's life. Do you think that that's a possibility? You might end up with something like that. This is the 3rd time.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think that whoever the next administration will have to be, hypothetically, if it is passed, it's for that administration to use the direction of the will of the people through the vote in the numbers to say, okay, the people seem open-minded to this as an option if it was passed. Now I need to go off and decide what is the best shape and form this will look like that will help benefit what we're trying to do, but that doesn't harm the country. And they may come up with a plan like that to say, okay, then the rule may be on 3 strikes you're out, it becomes criminal then. You know what I'm saying? Something like that. I don't know, but you may have heard me talk about this referendum as a gauge and as a guiding light for government decisions. And that's exactly what it is. So politicians...
You want to be given a direction.
Yes. And interesting, I was just going to say politicians. All 3 of us know exactly how it works. We do not want to touch things that are taboo because we don't know what side the majority is on things. And that's exactly why the referendum tool is in the Constitution. So when things are so sensitive and they're so too close to call... And polarizing, give the people the opportunity to give you their guiding light, right? So sometimes I sit back and I go, I'm still confused on why people would think that a referendum is bad. It really blows my mind. But then I recognize and I get back to reality and say, obviously people have agendas and they have their plans. So,
Well, I mentioned this because, again, it may be a situation where you are blessed and return back to, and blessed might be the right word, of course, but
it would be a blessing.
Maybe you're fortunate enough to make it back there, and who knows, being able to make the decisions as it will go forward in this particular case, in the event that you get a yes. And so I would just throw it out that I would see that you would probably want to put a committee together that one has the medical persons as well as individuals, lay persons from the society, because they would be able to help with that guidance and say, yes, I think as a lay person, I supported it because I understood what you were trying to achieve.
Correct.
But we could do a 3 strikes you're out program. So, they're able to lend that sort of advice so that you can come back with a final finished product.
I definitely think so. And there's people that have had experiences on, what do you call the board again, that when you go to prison,
rehabilitation?
No, when you're getting out for parole board. Like people like that who have experience in assessing your approach to things that have the balance, the layman and rehabilitation elements, police, doctors, medical component, a good cross section of that would be perfect.
And in this, honestly, I think I would encourage whoever it is to throw some lay persons in there, even 1 or 2 church persons, and a good representation of society, so that when you come out, you've got the technical experts there, and you've got lay persons that are very representative of society, giving their views.
But I think a lot has been said, and if we were to just basically summarize, I think what the minister said, and of course, the recommendations and suggestions of my colleague, is that this is a steer for future administrations.
Correct.
And if the country steers us in a yes direction, then there will be further fine-tuning to that steer by the next administration.
Couldn't say it better myself.
Yeah.
That and you see how simple you put that? That's what I've been saying. We don't have to overthink this. All this is to tell the next administration, whoever they may be. Maybe not these elected members. Maybe you might want somebody brand new, but give them a steer for yourself. Tell them what you think.
And if I could just offer, as my colleague likes to say, offer up the flowers while you're still alive. Whilst you are correct. This is the purpose of a referendum, and this is again where we talk about good democracy. We take our sticky questions that we don't have, unanimous support one way or the other. We take it to Joe Public because this is really about you. But you also, it's a gutsy move, just to ask the question. And we talked about it earlier on. We as a people have no problem getting together if you call on us and tell me what you think. Give me some solutions. We think of Vision 2008. We think of former, past development plan exercises. We are good at proposing some fantastic solutions. where we fall short is putting those solutions into action. And on this subject, we've talked about decriminalization. We've talked about a national lottery. God knows we've talked about cruise birthing enough, but nobody has.
I don't know why he keeps saying that.
Gutsy. I want to think of another word, but it is a very gutsy move, even sometimes to just put that question on the floor. Some politicians might say, boy, just asking the question might cause you to get, unelected. Well, but I commend you and the government forces that took this question to Joe Public, because it's very timely. So well done.
Thank you. I mean,
it took that.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, pause, because not that we want to bury you today, but if he's going to throw flowers, I can't let him get one and I'll get one in. Okay. So I want to give you a flower as well. It's not a competition. And I do want to ask you a question about cruise tourism, irrespective of whether my colleague wants to hear it or not. But I did mention at one of our public meetings that I think that you are very courageous for doing this, and I think it's important for the public to understand that my personal belief is that when you get elected, there's a fundamental decision that you have to make. Do I want to stay elected, or do I want to do the right thing? And I think most persons that have been tracking your career, would be able to sit and say, I think Kenneth Seat is pretty safe as long as he just does the right thing. And reaching out on a lot of these national issues like the lottery, like cruise tourism, is only making it a little bit harder for yourself. Yeah. And I walk away from that saying that I'm very impressed that you actually, in my humble opinion, in those particular instances, trying to do the right thing, irrespective of the risk that you're taking.
Yeah, straight talk.
So we've pretty much just about buried you with all those flowers. Mr.
Thank you so much.
Respond.
The only difference is you can cry now, you can't cry when you're gone. But on the issue of the cruisers, I really wanted to ask you this, because I know you had mentioned, and I don't personally, but I still believe there's some people out there that needs to be reached, and primarily more on an emotional level, because I think we've hit a wall in the facts and misinformation. But you had talked about getting the groups together, in particular in cruise tourism, where there's been that back and forth, and trying to have a kind of public discourse, a public discussion. Yeah. Is that something that you think you're still going to try to accomplish?
Most definitely. Let me accept my flowers.
So go ahead, take your flowers. Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say thank you guys so much for recognizing that, because if I said it, people wouldn't
be the same.
Wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
But you're right. I even said this in Parliament, where some people say, Kenneth, leave that referendum thing alone. Yep. Don't create no controversy. Just go in and get elected again.
Yeah. Take the easy road.
Take the easy route. And I go, how could I sleep knowing that, particularly for the cruise part. The other two, not the end of the world. I could have done without them. But the cruise part, to know that me delaying something to get this thing started properly, potentially another 4 more years before we deal with it, could be the difference of thousands of people's lives being upset. And I couldn't sleep with that. I couldn't live with that.
And the anxiety of not knowing where your future lies, So gutsy but timely, Minister.
If history shows that was the one thing that caused me to lose, then I don't want to lose. I want to serve my people. But I feel comfortable knowing that I think I did the right thing.
Did what you had to do.
Yeah. I prayed about it, and I made the call, and I'm thankful to my colleagues, because it's not just me. Yeah, my colleagues could have said, Kenneth, I ain't taking that risk. I ain't supporting you in that. Right. The government, our team together, did make that decision to say, we have to do this for the people, regardless of which way it's going to go, because it's the right thing to do.
Austin and I would share your understanding of knowing what it is to take the licks for doing the right thing sometimes. So we hope that you don't end up taking all those licks.
I hope not.
But speaking specifically to the debate, you think that it is something that is going to be achievable? Because so far there's been at least 3 calls for that sort of discussion, and the other side refuses to sit down and come to the table.
Yeah, and that's disappointing, I must admit. And I want to give you your flowers. People challenge the way you approach things, but I don't argue how you argued it. I want to come and beat you in your argument. Mm-hmm. That's how I see it. So I'm going to complain about how you did. If you could.
I would suggest a hula hoop competition. Just saying, I would leave that one to one side.
So
not going to end well.
I believe that yes, it would be beneficial to see both sides the debate and the information at the same time.
Of course.
Right? Because I even
Hugely beneficial.
yes, I kept on calling into the other show that has a talk show as well, and said, I don't like it when ACT is on by themselves, and I don't like it when CPR is on by themselves. But them both be on.
Correct.
And let some fact checkers be there to say, Ellio, you're talking nonsense. Here's the facts.
Yeah.
Or
Terrible example, but I know where you're going.
It would never happen.
I'm sorry.
Never happen.
Because if I don't use you as the example, then they'll criticize me
I
for
gotcha.
saying undermining them.
gotcha.
Or CPR and Johan Moxon, you're wrong because here's the facts. Is that equal?
Oh, I love that
That's
one.
fair. That's fair, right?
Yeah.
So I give an equal balance. Now, and I
That was more believable. Yeah, there you go. Okay.
I tried my endeavor best all the way through this to give a fair opportunity
Sure.
because I did not want to be criticized as I'm in it only for the crew side. Because I already know that criticism was going to come.
Yeah.
Because people have vested interest. I know because I was against the pair the last time.
Yeah.
So I don't want us to go down that road
Right.
because it can get really dirty.
Absolutely.
Right, and which is not necessary for the people.
Right.
So I've tried to present, and just to go back by history, when we announced it, I have asked them to be a part of a discussion. I invited them to the cruise conference of the year
I can attest to that.
to come and say, listen, you can speak to the cruise lines head to head
Yeah.
and ask them all the difficult
You
questions.
get out of the way. Yeah.
You ain't gonna get information. So when I come back home with the facts and information,
sorry,
you can't say I made it up.
What was the
I
answer?
want you to come, but nobody came. Now I must have to be truthful to the circumstances. Some of them were justified, like Miss Shirley Rolston wanted to come, but she has a private business. She couldn't make it. But if this issue is that important, make somebody available to come. And then when we came back home from that, I said, okay, fair enough. I can't fight against the fact that they're not coming for that. Then there was another local call locally to set up a panel discussion.
Yeah.
They refused to be a part of that too.
Yeah.
So you know what? I don't mind that though, because people will take from that action or inaction back a reading as to what the true position is. And
But gentlemen, we do have one caller on the line. Maybe they want to ask a question along
Yeah.
these lines. Ellio, you'll know what to do. Let's go to the phone lines. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good evening, Austin. How are you?
I'm very well, sir. Thank you for taking the time to call.
Okay. My issue about the marijuana, I don't have a problem with decriminalizing the marijuana because it has so many young people or so many people in this island lives have been destroyed because they smoked one joint or they had maybe 2 joints on them, and they go to court and they go to jail, and that's on their record for years to come. That is destroying a family, not only the person, although the person should have known, hey, it's against the law, I shouldn't do it. But you know how it is. People can't police themselves, then they have to be passing a law to police the people. But anyway, I don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with national lotto or lottery. What we need to do is, if they're not going to have a national lotto and people are caught selling numbers, if you caught selling numbers, put it up to $5,000, seize the property, and do whatever is necessary to cut that out, because that is turning people into criminals. People are losing their lives by having this number in our system, and no matter what you do, you're not going to stop it. There's no way you can stop that. People, humans. I go to Miami. I buy a lotto tickets. I don't buy numbers, so I don't have a problem with that. The one question, or not one question, and several questions, that I would like to ask Brian, Mr. Brian, what is his objective of trying to force Christopher Johnson, and let me make it abundantly clear, me and Christopher Johnson is not friends. I have not had a conversation with him other than prosecuting him when I was a police officer back in the 60s, when he was speeding. So I want that to make that abundantly clear. But what gives him to, once the law is passed, that said the judge goes and do it in the favor of the government, then what gives, it's scary to know that government would be able to come into my property and seize my property. That's why it is, to do whatever they want to do. I may be the next victim.
Yes.
There's an alternate site called Hogsty Bay that is much better for the fish market, because you even got a building there. They could arrange with the catboat to the fishermen to use the clean their catch of the day, and it would be much more sanitary than having it done out in the open with flies hanging around.
Okay. All right, sir. If I can ask you to just leave us there on that point, and to our guests, certainly it is on the discussion agenda to speak about the Red Spot Beach and, of course, the Georgetown Revitalization Initiative. But I fear we run the risk of losing, I think, the gains that we've made so far in focusing on the referendum questions to do it in order. I don't want to diminish the caller's the importance of his question. Certainly give you an opportunity to answer that question, but wait a little bit till we get there.
I'm happy to answer either way. I just want to thank him for calling in, because there's a lot of people who think like that. So,
well, I'll ask you to hold that thought. We have another caller on the line. Let's just hear what they have to say. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Hi, good evening, finally.
Good evening.
Hi, Austin and Ellio.
Hello.
Deputy Premier Brian, good evening.
Good evening.
I am calling as a member of the public, and it's always good to listen to, I think that was Mr. Dexter, but I wanted to say on the point of the government trying to, achieve this piece of property here on the waterfront, that it's not only about buying the property. My view is it's not only about buying the property for our local fishermen to remain there and fish, but it's also a historical piece of our harbor, and our shorelines are gradually disappearing as we know them, as the areas that make Cayman what Cayman is and why people want to visit Cayman. And we need to try to hold on to some semblance of that along our shorelines in order to continue to be the Cayman Islands, in order for our people to enjoy and have this property as it's always been. And I don't believe that some people see those ideals about why government feels that, you know what, this is the last measure that we have to take, and we're going to take it. Because I applaud the government. Honestly, I applaud the government for taking this step, and people may not like me saying it, but as someone who grew up in Georgetown, who grew up in that area, jumping off the iron shore into the sea, playing there with my friends, I know if Mr. Norberg was alive, he would not be happy of what they may be trying to accomplish with this property if it remains in the present owner's possession, respectfully saying so. So I applaud the government. The government offered, according to the news, the government offered, I think it was 15% above market value for this property. And as I said on social media today, if we have people that are investing in our islands and they have properties and they're not willing to invest in such a means where it contributes to having our islands in certain places remain as the part of the Cayman Islands that will benefit the islands, then what's the purpose? You know, we have other persons who have emigrated to the Cayman Islands, and they've invested money that they brought with them into these islands, into our people, into maintaining some areas of our islands in a preservation manner. And I think that it's sort of selfish of this respectfully, I don't know the person, but I think it's sort of selfish to feel you want to hold on to that part of Caymanian history and turn it into something else rather than, allowing it to remain as it is and contributing to the Cayman Islands and what drew you to the islands in the first place. The other thing I wanted to touch on is the I'm not too familiar with referendums. I'm still in the learning process of all those things, but I can say this from a personal point of view. I think referendums, and again, I'm speaking as a member of the public, I think referendums are a way of giving the people, the voters, an opportunity for them to make a decision, and then they will say, we are the ones that voted for or against this, or the majority, rather than, certain things be pushed down upon the people. Now, another point I have to say the Fort Pier, the cruise pier, is when Mr. I understand Mr. Berkeley Bush was the person that was spearheading the building of the dock as we know it, and people were, the Caymanians, the people of the islands were majorly against that, but Mr. Berkeley went ahead and did it anyway. And excuse me if my history is not correct, but this is what I remember. If the people he went ahead and did it anyway, where would Cayman have been today if he didn't take that initiative? So, there's a bit of flip side there that we can think about when it comes to certain things. And I think our people needs to do a bit more research and maybe do a bit more thought thinking with certain issues that we know are going to affect our islands, but yet other countries are going in a certain direction, and we're kind of getting left behind when we are holding back from developing certain things. And in regards to the marijuana, me as a person in the legal field, and I was working at the courthouse in the criminal registry for 4 years. We heard Minister Bryan there speak about his past experience. I also had another brother who had convictions on his record for possession, and it ruined his life. And I wish this was something that had been put on a ballot many years ago. I've worked with many young people, not just males, but females, in the court system and out of the court system, who have had a simple personal possession of marijuana on their records, and it's basically ruined their lives. They weren't able to do anything with themselves. They couldn't even get a job because their past is still replicated as their present. I know a young man right now who has on his record, it's not from marijuana, but he did have a charge there. He has rehabilitated himself, has a family, has a very good public service job, and wants to go away to training to better himself, and he's not able to do it because certain things are on his record. So I want to applaud putting this on the ballots for voters to make a choice about this. I know that it has ruined a lot of young people's lives, and I think the minister is doing an eloquent job of describing and explaining how the whole process is going to work. And I hope this broadcast will be pre-recorded so it can be aired again, not only on the radio, but somehow the video shown online. So a lot of the persons who's going through this situation, you'd be surprised, may not be even listening to this show or even some of the other talk shows, but we need to get this information out in all avenues that we can. Now the lottery, I support a national lottery. The flip side to me saying that is I don't support the number selling, but I support a national lottery, and simply because of my experience overseas, and I've seen the benefits that could pour into the islands. Let's say we were referring to Cayman, the benefits of pouring into the islands. Having a national lottery in place, because it produces income and revenue. And what I've also seen is that the ability to take $1 or $2 and buy a number has been a benefit to many, many people. I've seen people, I don't buy numbers, but I've seen people that were broke, I mean literally broke, but had $2 and poured into a number and was able to win $500 or $300. I've been in Foster's and seen someone use the proceeds of numbers to help someone buy groceries that was there short from having a food card from well, now it's DFA. They had a food card from DFA and their funds did not come through on their card, and someone else was there who had just won a few dollars from lottery.
Yes.
And I mean, this is only a one-off situation. We don't know if there's more situations like this. But I think there are benefits to having a national lottery. I mean, it's something that's done in many other jurisdictions now. I think it's something that the government should be in control of, not just nilly-willy people selling on the streets.
Right.
You know, and that
Paula,
it will generate revenue.
I hate to interrupt you,
Yeah.
but I think
No,
for
you're
that
good. I'm finished. I'm
contribution.
finished.
And we want to give certainly the minister in studio an opportunity to respond. Minister, we have 4 minutes before we have to go and take our next break. I was trying to approach this in an expeditious and organized, orderly fashion, but just to the point, we had 2 callers on the subject of compulsory acquisition. One against it, one for it.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously, you can choose if you want to respond to that. But I believe if we can just encapsulate and close up the referendum question conversation, then we can take the other bits. You not ignoring the questions.
No, I definitely do want to ignore.
Not ignoring the questions, but taking our time to answer them as comprehensively as they were asked. So again, to just encapsulate and wrap up the referendum question, moving to the national lottery specifically, only because people are still calling it, you know, the confusion between
numbers,
is it a lottery, numbers, and gambling.
Yeah.
You know, and there's a cruise tourism aspect of that conversation as well, because I'm hearing the whole gambling notion.
I see.
Finding their way into the same
discussion.
Question. So we just to offer some clarity with the remaining 4 minutes we have.
Okay, so quickly, the national lottery is something that came to focus on the basis of, unfortunately, a lot of the crime around this black market of illegal numbers in the Cayman Islands.
Yeah.
It's nothing new. I mean, I think as long as I've been alive, I'm 44 years old, and as long as I've been alive, I've been hearing about numbers being sold in Cayman. And, you know, good standing citizens in our community buy numbers. But that's not the point. The point is it's illegal. And then we were advised by the police and experts, the former commissioners, 2 previous commissioners, saying that it is not worth policing this space because the penalties around it is so minuscule. You can put an operation into, you know, take down a person who is known to be selling numbers. So you put man hours in there, you got 15 officers, court time, lawyer time, and then the person comes out with $500 fine. And that's for the seller. Just a person who got caught buying with a ticket, $40. So what the advice was, particularly after the passing of Mr. Ellio, was that if you want to take away this criminality from around this illegal numbers thing, you have to increase the penalties. And we stopped ourselves as members of parliament to say, hold on, before we do that, how do we even know that the people want this to still be illegal? So they may be actually want it to be illegal, because if it's illegal, then you can put the proper regulations and safety components around it that takes it away from the black market. Because the reason why it's so much criminality around it is because the robbers and the thieves know, if I go rob a number man, he can't go to the police because he's doing a crime as well. So if it becomes legal, then you can put safety components around it. Obviously, any kind of gambling, whether it's national lottery or otherwise, comes with some risk. But you need to know whether the people want something that is considered gambling, illegal still, before you even proceed forward on what you should do. So, but we can talk more about it when we come back from the break.
Indeed. Well, Minister, I thank you very much for that. It is 5:58 in the studios, and we're going to pause, go off to our top of the hour news brought to you by the BBC. But the phone lines remain open at 745-2626. We will be moving away from the referendum question specifically and on to the Red Spot Beach conversation, as well as, if time permits, the Georgetown Revitalization Initiative. Certainly the last 2 callers asked 2 very comprehensive questions specifically on the notion of compulsory acquisition, which isn't a new notion, but we'll talk about it. And of course, they're diametrically opposed views. One says, you know, I'm opposed to government taking anything from me, compulsory or otherwise, whilst the other caller says, It is absolutely needed. We have to think about our culture and heritage. We need to think about the fishermen. Do it, Minister, because certainly it is, the right thing to do. But we'll be back with more Straight Talk right here, brought to you exclusively by Bobo FM.
The BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
The BBC World Service makes programs with a uniquely global perspective.
Enlighten us. Where do we start?
The latest world news and current affairs.
The very best in global arts and culture.
What has been happening on the financial markets today?
Social issues, political stories.
Everything was there in a way that I'd never heard before.
The BBC World Service.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
Welcome to our newsroom here in central London. We place ourselves here at a little desk right in the thick of things.
OS from the BBC.
We can catch the very latest news from our colleagues, not just in this enormous room, but also from our colleagues around the world.
I'm in the room where they're treating children.
This is a combat zone.
The situation after the typhoon is very complicated.
It was a very tense situation. OS from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
BBC News.
BBC News.
World news from the BBC. Violent clashes.
Thick black smoke.
A tremendous legal victory.
Crucial elections.
Destructive wind.
A search and recovery operation.
A race against time.
An imminent threat.
Flying a drone over a rival team's training session.
Whatever is happening, wherever it's happening, catch up with the latest news bulletins from the BBC.
The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM. This is Bobo FM, powered by Doctors Hospital. 24/7 urgent care, located in Georgetown at the top of Walker's Road. Introducing the Doctors Hospital Specialty Clinic, conveniently located in the Strand. To book your appointment at Doctors Hospital, call 325-9000. Across Cayman on 89.1 FM, online and on your smart speaker. The home of the BBC World Service. This is Bobo FM.
This is Danielle Yaowiecka with the BBC News. Hello. The US National Security Advisor Mike Waltz has again urged President Zelensky to sign a deal for US access to Ukraine's minerals to pay for support in its war against the Russian invasion. Mr. Waltz also said that Ukraine needs to tone down its criticism of the United States.
Some of the rhetoric coming out of Kyiv, frankly, and insults to President Trump were unacceptable, number one. Number two, our own Secretary of Treasury personally made the trip to offer the Ukrainians what can only be described as a historic opportunity. That is for America to co-invest with Ukraine in their minerals, in their resources, to truly grow the pie.
Mr. Zelensky, who has been meeting the US envoy Keith Kellogg in Kyiv, described the talks as productive and called for strong ties with Washington. But a scheduled news conference was cancelled at the last minute. The Republican-controlled US Senate has voted to confirm President Trump's nominee Kash Patel as head of the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Mr. Patel is a staunch Trump loyalist and had promised to go after Donald Trump's enemies if he ever ran the FBI, comments he retracted during his hearing. Israel's Defence Minister Israel Katz says he has ordered the military to step up its offensives across the occupied West Bank after 3 empty buses exploded in parking lots near Tel Aviv. There have been no reports of injuries. Lipika Pelham reports.
Videos online show one of the buses on fire with thick smoke rising above a parking area in Bat Yam, a coastal suburb in South Tel Aviv. Local media reported that when the police defused the bombs, they found one of the devices inscribed with the message, "Revenge for Tulkarem," referring to a recent Israeli military raid, Operation Iron Wall, in a refugee camp in the northern West Bank town. Israeli TV reported that the devices were programmed to explode on Friday when the buses would have been in use, but were somehow set off early.
Mexico's army says it's arrested a senior member of the Sinaloa drug cartel, one of the country's most powerful criminal organisations. His arrest has been seen as a big blow for the gang. Will Grant has more details.
He is a significant capture
for the Mexican security forces. There's no doubt about it. This is Jose Angel Canovio. He is ostensibly the head of security for one of the sons of the jailed drug lord El Chapo Guzman, his son Ivan Archibaldo Guzman, and just that alone tells you that he's a significant figure in the Sinaloa cartel. Drug war experts in Mexico say he was also influential in the organization's recent push to make fentanyl trafficking such a large part of its criminal empire.
You're listening to the World News from the BBC. Bolivia's former president Evo Morales has announced he'll run for office again in August's election, defying a ban imposed by the Constitutional Court. He has secured the nomination from a small party after falling out with President Luis Arce, who will represent the Movement for Socialism. Mr. Morales served as president for 13 years until he resigned in 2019 and fled the country. A UN report says that at current growth rates, Syria's economy will take more than 50 years to return to pre-conflict levels due to the devastating effect of the civil war. The UN's development programme says the 14-year conflict destroyed much of Syria's infrastructure, and this was compounded by heavy sanctions imposed on the former Assad regime. The authorities in Azerbaijan have ordered the suspension of the BBC's Azeri service. It comes a week after Azerbaijan's oldest independent news agency, Turan, was also shut down. Here's our Caucasus correspondent, Rayhan Dimitri.
The BBC's Azeri service and Turan news agency were the last two independent news sources in the oil-rich country of 10 million people. The BBC Azeri website had up to 1 million readers per week, providing impartial news in a country where information is tightly controlled. More than 20 independent Azerbaijani journalists have been jailed since the government intensified its crackdown on independent media in 2023. Journalists are often accused of currency smuggling, a charge that human rights groups have described as dubious.
In basketball, one of the best young players in the United States, Victor Wembanyama, is to miss the rest of the season after he was diagnosed with deep vein thrombosis in his right shoulder. Wemby, as he is often called, was the Rookie of the Year last season and was on course to be the Defensive Player of the Year. And that's the latest BBC World News.
The views and opinions expressed on Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio do not necessarily reflect or represent the views of Stingray Media, its staff, or contributors. Callers to the program accept full responsibility for the views expressed. The show host and affiliates are not liable for any statements made or any harm claimed. All callers to the program indemnify Straight Talk from all claims. Offensive, defamatory, or unlawful content will not be tolerated. Be a part of the conversation by calling 745-2626. Now, here's Straight Talk with Austin and Ellio on Bobo FM.
And welcome back, K-Man, to more Straight Talk. I'm your host, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon. Okay, of course, 89.1 here on FM, and it's like 6:06 in the studio.
Yes,
24 minutes left to go. Why are we not surprised?
Indeed.
The Minister Deputy Premier just had to step away for a couple of seconds. Be right back very soon. But while I have that break, Austin, I just really want to say, if we have persons that are concerned about individuals losing their property, and I understand, I share some of those concerns, yes. But if we're concerned about individuals losing their land under a forced acquisition, and in this particular case, you have the benefit of at least knowing that Caymanians are going to benefit from it. Yeah. I want to speak up for some of the persons that may not have a voice, right, that are losing their land, they can say in the hundreds of acres, yes, in the protection of blue iguanas. And this is their hard land that they wanted to do stuff with as well. So when you got DOE, for example, the environmentalists, again, taking people's land, think about that. And it's not benefiting Caymanians, supposedly benefiting some iguanas. Again, on the discussion for another day, but we're going to resume our discussion here with Deputy Premier, the Honorable Kenneth Bryan.
Premier, certainly you heard the questions posed, and again, we're now moving into the Red Spot Beach.
Yeah.
Maybe in your response to the two callers who were, again, opposed to compulsory acquisition, one for, one against, one even suggested, if not the Red Spot Beach, perhaps there are other alternative locations that can achieve the same ends. In your own words, sir, an opportunity to explain the controversy, the issue on the Red Spot Beach, what your position is, and of course an opportunity to respond to the two questions that we've had so far.
Okay, thank you so much again. particularly to both callers, I want to say thank you so much for participating in the discussion, which is important and essential for us to come to a conclusion of how we're going to move forward as a society. I don't think I have to respond to the second caller, because the second caller was in the same position as me, which is in support of. And obviously, the government is in support of this, because that's why they're taking the action. Just to give you a little bit of background history about Red Spot, not the historical component. I think most people know. I guess generational Caymanians would know. Maybe some new Caymanians won't. That spot was a location that was heavily used by fishermen and just locals alike for food and consumption way before we got so developed. Hence the reason the red spot. And I'm not sure if it had anything to do with the color or the cleaning of fish or anything like that, but I know all my life, my father, I used to go there as a kid and wait till my dad come in with his boat and go out there and clean fish, and I was cool with the little grunter, a little snapper, and scaling it and gutting it, and I became a man, so to speak, out there on those rocks. And this was before the current owner purchased the property. So I think it's fair to say that the current owner had knowledge that this kind of behavior was happening there for that period of time. So over time, things that we do become a part of our culture, our heritage, and what is our identification of who we are as Caymanians. So for me, in my mind, this particular activity at that location means something to us as Caymanians. And this is why it's more than just, or could the fishermen go somewhere else? Of course, there's miles and miles around the island that they could go. They don't have to clean fish in the water. They can clean it on land. But I think this is an example of it's time to start standing up and protecting our way of life more than just the fishermen alone. But the fishermen is an example, a symbol of protection of our way of life. It's like saying, for example, the Governor's Beach. We all use it. You can simply say, well, why don't you go down to a beach somewhere else and let somebody else develop that? I can use that excuse too. They can go anywhere. That's not the point. The point is, this is who we are and what we are. And it's not like
the difference is one is crown land and the other is private land.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I want to say that.
No, that's a very good point. But here's some of the things I don't get, because I've tried. I know that the former minister, the Honorable Joseph Hugh, tried to have conversations. I've tried to have conversations, and it's not as if to say that we wanted to have this issue or this compulsory acquisition with the gentleman. We were trying to find compromise. I think everybody who knows him, who understands what the government is trying to do, try to reach out and try to extend the olive branch and say, can you please consider? But that was never accepted. To the point where, and this is the part that disturbed me, and I have a personal place with this, I was there one of the many times that the fishermen were served with legal documents to leave after, at least 50 years, as I'm aware of. 50 years of using that location for that purpose.
Yeah, we had a listener to the program yesterday confirmed 60 years.
60
years,
years, right?
It's been going on for more than a day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when I think about that and I go, okay, it's not that we wanted to take it. It just seems as if he wants to stop the cultural norm that we are aware of. And I go, hold on, why do you want to move him?
Well, see, that's the thing. He said outright, at least if you believe the media, that he is not selling at any price. And that leads me to the question, obviously in his mind, there is no compromise. In his mind, I'm not willing to work with the government. In his mind, you're not going to buy my property. So my question to you is this issue going to find resolution before April 30th? Or is this another one of those save it for the next administration?
No.
And I only want to point out that, and this is an education moment, though the House is going to be dissolved or prorogued on March the 1st, with nomination being the 3rd of March, you as a member of cabinet remain in office doing your job until the next government is sworn in.
Correct.
Only the backbenchers are, quote unquote, out of a job, and election time. So my question is there a possibility in that small window that there may be a resolution in your mind, or will this be carried forward?
I can't answer that. And the reason why I can't answer that is I don't know how long the legal proceedings will take.
Right.
So if the judge comes to resolution before April 30th, then there's no issue to deal with. The court has dealt with it.
Right.
I think what you're asking me is could this move be stopped if it goes into another administration and then there's a different administration with a different approach?
Sure.
Meaning another government that comes in and goes, no, I don't think we should do that. Right. Yes, that is possible. I'm hoping that it's resolved before then, because I don't think this is an issue only about Red Spot. This is about Cayman and standing up for what we identify as. I mean, I can't put it no other simpler way to say that this gentleman, as far as I've heard, is a good person. But you saw the people there when you bought the property. You can't do anything. You can't build on it. The parcel is too small to do anything. So when I ask myself the question, I always try to reflect on everything I do. I go, well, why would you want to say no?
Right.
Yeah, well, I have a question to ask on that, but I think we have a flashing light that they left us.
It's gone, so please
okay. Yeah, so
I
guess I have two questions, perhaps for the benefit of the listening audience. Are you aware, one, of the total size of that piece of land? Because when you speak to it, I'm thinking of a very small scale of land, but it might be a little bit larger than that. And then the second question is, do we understand or know what the owner of the land intends to use it for? Like, is there some utility to it? What's the plan?
Well, if I can ask you to stick a pin on that.
We got a caller now.
Take the phone call. Good evening, caller. You're on the air.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I just got my truck and just tuned in. I hear the dynamic duel there, Ellio and Austin, a blast from the past.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and
good to hear you too.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, long time. And
Been a
Mr.
while,
Brian,
my friend.
good evening to you too, my friend.
Good evening, sir. Good evening, sir.
Yeah. The topic at hand was the area where the gentleman cleaned the fish in Georgetown there.
Yes, sir.
Right.
Correct.
Right. So what we're speaking of, like mandatory paying the gentleman off that owns it and keeping some things Caymanian, like, you know, that's a way of life. That's been a part of the fabric for a long, long time.
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree with mandatory acquisition with that particular piece. But the gentleman, he doesn't want to sell, is what you're saying, Mr. Brian?
Correct.
So what step do we take next?
Well, the steps have already been taken. The cabinet has decided to move forward with public compulsory acquisition, and it was supported by members. And so we've issued directions to the Attorney General's office to start the proceedings for compulsory acquisition. So it's now before the courts. I don't know the date exactly when the first hearing will be, but the latest update I got, because I'm not dealing with the legal matters, the Attorney General's office does that. But what we did before the legal proceedings happened is try to do every single possible thing that we can do to find a resolution before taking the what you call the last resort, which is the public compulsory acquisition. We offered more money than it's valued. We've tried to have discussions with him about other matters, and there was just total resistance. I think, Austin, you can confirm, because I didn't read anything that he said.
I'll be happy to.
But he's publicly said that he refuses to sell at
He's
no
not
price.
going to sell at any price, was the direct quote that he gave the company.
That is extremely sad. You know, here we are, such a welcoming bunch of people, the Cayman people. People come from all over the world, settle with us, we embrace them, and then they try to erase us, you know, erase our culture, erase our identity, not willing to be flexible and have some sort of compromise. I would encourage any government, the sitting government or any future governments to take it to the extreme and get what's rightfully Caymanian, to be honest. I just want to make two quick other points.
Sure.
I also heard on April 30th, the referendum was going to include legalizing gambling.
national lottery.
National lottery. How? Just say that passes and we get it. How is the government intending to get their fair shake, or how is the government going to police the selling of lottery that it would generate some revenue for the country? Like, how would you earmark a portion of that for the country, for the government?
I will try to answer it. If you want to.
No, just give what you can.
No. I know. But
I think what he's asking is if you can ask you two questions, and then he'll answer both.
No. One leads into the next.
All right.
Oh, okay. Well, I think the question was, how would we police it if the government got the mandate from the people in order to move forward with it?
Right.
Right now, there's a difference between a national lottery and the numbers game, and there's a difference between that and gambling. So gambling, it technically is, all of it is gambling, but gambling, most people think of that as like a casino concept. That's not what we're saying. We're saying a national lottery that is either once a day or potentially even once a week. I'm not sure. But what we're trying to do is get a steer from the people. Now, in respect to your question, I think you're saying, well, how do you ensure that the government gets its fair share? I mean, once you create the regime and the legislation for it, people can get the private sector run, and there's a percentage of the winnings that goes to whatever initiative, whether it's education, sports, healthcare for seniors, healthcare for kids, whatever you want to choose it for.
For certain necessary things.
Yeah. Yeah, but the government will dictate what that is, and the government of the day will be the one to do that. But I don't think that would prevent you from the black market. But what it will then do, and you may not have listened to the earlier part of the show where the government, the police advice was to increase the penalties in the current numbers market. And the general appetite of all members of parliament was, hold on for a minute, this has been enshrined in us and been doing it for so long. Even though it's technically illegal, the law hasn't changed in 60 years. Should we not ask the people first whether they want it to continue to be illegal first before we increase the penalties and assume that they want it to be illegal? So that's what we're trying to do. So if the people say they don't want it to be illegal and they want a national lottery, then you set up a proper regime that is regulated and legislated, that people can do it in the legal way. And those who are in the illegal activity, then you can encourage the penalties of stronger penalties and like fines, as well as prison sentences for those who are in the black market. And then what that does is discourage people from doing it illegally, and then people will do it through the proper channels. Because one of the just to finalize my thought there, one of the biggest problems that we were trying to resolve also is the criminality around the black market. And we know about the gentleman who passed away. So this is one way that we can take away the criminality, at the same time not taking away the opportunities that people seeming to be okay with by way of a national lottery.
So I get what you're saying, but that's not really the question I had. If it was passed into legislation and it became legal, how would we police it to get some financial benefit from it? That was my question.
Okay, well, so I mean, I don't know specifically. There's different formulas and formats you can use, but I'm assuming that the government will investigate which options are available: the United States model, the Jamaican model, the Honduran model. But ultimately, it would be a share of the proceeds will go to core government as a revenue that can be specifically earmarked for specific things.
If I can just interject, maybe it'll help you call a little bit. And again, you should tune in from earlier, but I get it.
I'm a working man, my friend.
I hear you. But what the government is asking on all three questions, number one is a steer. Do you support it? Do you not support it?
Correct.
If the answer to one or all three is yes, then there will be a further refining process to answer the hows, the smaller moving parts. To your question, do we earmark the proceeds 30%, 40%, 50% to education, to housing, to welfare? Who's going to police it?
I think
all of those questions are legitimate, but they need a direction first, and that's, I think, the purpose of the referendum.
I think generally he's asking how government's going to make the revenues from it. I can share one experience with you. I know when we were in office, Lion, we had got some consulting work done, and I think, to the best of my knowledge, the proposal was that government would be able to make approximately $12 million per annum. It wasn't a lot, but it was $12 million per annum on a lottery. I'm sorry, yeah, on a national lottery. And that if we wanted to make it larger than that, it would have to have been a scheme that included like something regional throughout the Caribbean. But
okay.
Yeah, we got 5 minutes left in the show, caller, so if I can encourage you to get to your last question.
That's what I really want to get to.
Yes, please.
Can I make a suggestion here on the lottery, right?
Mm-hmm.
Why? Because this would help people. I think this would definitely help the public, the populace, to make a sound decision whether it would be good or not good for the country. And I think it could. It has good potential. Me personally, I think it has good potential if managed properly. And here's how I would like to see it managed. I would like to see it managed, if it's passed into legislation, by a gaming commission comprised of financial lawyers and accountants who can monitor this professionally. The government gets its fair shake and earmark the proceeds to whatever is most necessary for the country. That's my part. In wrapping up, speaking of mandatory acquisition, I think way back in yesteryear when public open space on the coastline, whether it was beach or iron shore, was from the water's edge to the vegetation, and that has been taken away. That you get it, it's only from the high water mark down to the water. I think that's totally unfair to the Cayman people, because we have people that are very entitled that come here that actually believe they own the beach. Mm-hmm. They actually believe they own the beach. And we have a situation on 7 Mile Beach where the beach is fastly eroding. Yeah. And the former premier, Mr. Pannon, opted to restore the beach with $21 million of Cayman, the taxpayers' dollars, actually. But then that would be to enhance private land.
Right. Caller, respectfully, caller, I apologize. I truly do. But I have to ask you to leave us there. We have 3 minutes, 30 seconds left in the program. The caller said a lot. I want to turn the floor over to the minister to answer the questions and give us closing comments.
Just specifically, I think the biggest one there is the notion about how would you ensure that the government gets its revenue. And he made a good suggestion, a gaming commission. And I think that's standardized. Different people call it different things, a gambling council, a licensing regime. Whatever framework you do, you have to police it within the revenue ministry to make sure that the government gets its taxes, just like how in any other case. So I think that's minor. Like you said, this is a steer for us to get the confidence to go forward with a solution, come back with it, and say, okay, we're going to pass this into law, and it goes out to public consultation as it is. Right. So you did a great assessment of that. I'm sorry the time ran out. I really enjoyed today's show. So
that just means you have to come back.
But we want you to come back now.
Give me a little taste of it.
Georgetown revitalization yet at all.
Correct.
So clearly, your views and comments are resonating with the listening audience. So our door is wide open.
Thank you so much.
Your flag has already been planted, so theoretically, you're no longer a stranger. You're family now. Yeah. But Minister, 2 minutes, closing comments.
There's just one thing that I want to say that I think, particularly with the red spot situation, which I find disappointing. Those who oppose the port and those have a right to oppose, I believe in democracy. But being misleading is very terrible, in my humble opinion. Miss Melanie Carmichael has posted on CNS that the government is trying to get red spot compulsory because of we're planning to build a cruise pier and we need that land for it. I'm disappointed, and I'm going to say it as loud as I possibly can because she put her name to the comment. That is not the case. And so much so that I've asked the governor and the AG to make sure that when we do acquire it, it is categorized under public use only and can never be used for anything else. So again, this is the disappointing kind of behavior that you see from the other side, who don't fight fair because their facts are not good, and they start to use these tactics. We are getting that land for the culture and history of our country and the fishermen in our way of life. It has nothing to do with the cruise pier at all. So with that being said, I'm done.
Well, the minister responsible here on Straight
You heard that, right? All I can say is Sustainable Cayman CPR will never let facts get in the way of a good argument. That's the last thing they're going to do. How much time we have left in the studio?
We have exactly 1 minute.
Well, I just want to say very quickly, thanks for Lion, all the persons for calling in, but thank Lion for calling in as well. And I want to give him congratulations. I see that his son has thrown his hat in the ring, and I'm not surprised by that at all, considering that his father is such an outspoken gentleman and standing up for whatever he believes is right for the Cayman Islands. But either way, it's been good to have you here, Minister. And, of course, we still have more flowers, for the bumblebee here. And I have to tease him because we were there at the COC meeting, Chamber of Commerce, and I looked down and there is Brian with the bumblebee socks.
A bumblebee
I'm like,
man.
this bumblebee is going too far.
Yes.
You know,
I'll tell you about it in the next show.
Well, we're going to get on to that. To float like a butterfly and sting like a bee. So either way, thank you very much, Minister, for coming in the program. And again, for all those persons who tuned in to listen to us today, we greatly appreciate it. And hopefully you'll join us again tomorrow. That finishes 2 weeks. How time flies, Austin.
Time flies when we're having a good time. Minister, I just want to echo those sentiments. Thank you for being our first guest. The door is always open.
Couldn't think of a better
Thank you
guest.
for the elucidation and clarification that you provided to our listening audience and to the callers. Thank you for your contributions.
Absolutely.
We're your hosts, Austin Harris.
And I'm Ellio Solomon. See you tomorrow right here on Straight Talk 89.1 FM.
The BBC on Bobo. This is the BBC World Service. Across Cayman on Bobo FM.